Hello, welcome to Longshot Larry's Sports Astrology. Today we're moving on with our theory series of videos. We're going to look at team charts, and the first video is about which charts to use to represent the team. So we've got two different types of sports, individual and team sports. For individual sports, just look at the player and the country if that player is a national icon. So sports like tennis, most players like Novak Djokovic is a national icon or treasure in Serbia. You can use the country charts for big games. When we're looking at team sports, I'm relying on this theory of the doctrine of subsumption, which is something Charles Carter first coined after the disastrous attempts of astrology to predict whether there would be a war or not before the outbreak of World War II. And the idea is there's a hierarchy of charts in that the national chart takes more precedence than an individual chart when events affect a group of people. So to represent a team, I look at the coach first of all. The coach is usually the first one to get the axe if things are going bad. They're generally more responsible for the performance of a team. And I also look at team leaders to represent the team as a whole. So a generic way to look at team sports is if it's a sport which is well followed in the country, so that would be soccer or football in most countries in the world, rugby union in New Zealand, or cricket in India and Pakistan, South Asia, you can look at the chart for the country for international games like World Cups. The coach and manager is usually next in importance, and for domestic competitions, they're most important. Then the player, the captain, the quarterback, and you can also look at the chart for the first game that the franchise played. So first sport I'm going to look at is tennis. So we're looking at the player and the chart of the country for Grand Slam finals mainly. So this is the final of the Australian Open from 2022, Nadal versus Medvedev. Medvedev was favourite here. You can see that Pluto is exactly on the descent at the start of this game, so relations to Pluto are going to be very important. So I've got the event in the inner ring and the chart for Nadal on the outer ring, and we have a time chart for Nadal. So Pluto was quincunx's Mercury over here, which rules his Gemini sun. Quincunxes are inherently neutral in nature. They can go either way. He was down 2 sets to love and came back and won 3 sets to 2, so he adjusted his game, which is the nature of a quincunx. He also has a Scorpio ascendant, which relates well to Pluto. So what about the chart for Spain? For the country charts, I use the latest chart as a general rule. So this one's from 1975. In this chart here, we can see that Spain is a Scorpio nation. So it does relate well to Pluto. It's also got Pluto applying or sextile to the MC Mercury here. The MC is also in Scorpio. And you can also see the part of fortune is conjunct Mars here, which Mars in a country chart represents sporting success. So Spain was very happy with the result of this game. Looking at the women's final between Ash Barty and Collins, Venus is the most prominent planet. Venus is turning stationary direct in about an hour's time, so during the course of this game. So when you have a station, you need to pay close attention to that. And it is trine Uranus here. Looking at the chart for Ash Barty, it is a solar chart. How does she relate to Venus? Well, number one, she's a Taurus. So Venus is a ruling planet, which helps. Mars is also applying to her Taurian sun, which is a helpful aspect. You can also see that the part of fortune here is applying to her Venus 2 degrees, a little bit wide, but which rules her sun. When we bring up the chart for Australia, this was an important game because an Australian hadn't won the women's singles for over 40 years, since the 1970s I think was the last one. So there was a lot riding on this for the Australian public. Venus is going to station close to the sun, but also trine the Mars here. And as I said, Mars represents sporting achievement in a country, and Uranus is applying a trine to Mars. So that reinforced the chances that Barty would win, and she ended up winning 2-0. Next, we're going to look at the football code. So I've got football, soccer, rugby union, rugby league, and Aussie rules. They're all similar. You can look at the country charts for international competitions like the World Cup and Euros and things like that for football, and rugby union as well. The state there is mainly for rugby league. 3 of the 4 biggest games of the year New South Wales versus Queensland, so you can look at the chart for the state. For league or domestic competitions, the coach or manager is the most important, I would say. The success or otherwise of the team tends to fall on their shoulders. The captain on the field is next in importance. Sometimes you have more than one captain, but generally the captain is very important. And also you can look at the first game that the franchise play. First one we're going to look at here is Italy versus England. So this is the final of the Euro 2020, even though it was played in 2021. You can see here Mercury is going to change signs during this game into Cancer when a planet changes to 0 degrees of the cardinal signs. That is something worth noting. Also see that Jupiter is trine the descendant here, which is important in a minute. Now looking at the chart for Italy, Italy is a Gemini country, has a sun in Gemini conjunct Uranus. It also has a Virgo MC, so Mercury is important, and Mercury is sextile that MC. So if we line this game up with the Italian Republic on the outer ring, you can see that Jupiter is applying to a trine to that Mercury, which is right on the descendant at the start, which is a fortuitous alignment because it's ruling their Sun and MC. Jupiter is opposing the MC here, but that was enough for Italy to get the win in the Euro. Next one is the Liverpool-Real Madrid Champions League 2022 final. This one actually started, 37 minutes late. So I've got actual here. It was supposed to start at 9 o'clock due to a ticketing fiasco. Changed the chart quite a bit. You've now got Jupiter exactly on the IC at the start, ruling the ascendant. You've also got the Sun exactly on the descendant. You also note that the Moon is opposing part of fortune. Mars is ruler of the fourth, applying to the fourth, and Jupiter ruling the first in the fourth. 3 indicators there of potential upset, which Real Madrid did get the upset here. So looking at the coach of Real Madrid, Carlo Ancelotti, time chart, see that Jupiter is applying to a trine to his Venus, Moon, Mars, which is very nice. Now Jupiter trine Moon, or Jupiter Moon contacts are very positive. Jupiter conjunct Moon is probably one of the best alignments you will see to indicate success, but we don't have that many time charts. So that lined up well for him. What about the captain? Another time chart for Benzema. How does he relate to Jupiter on the IC here? Well, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets in Sagittarius, including his Moon and Sun, so a double Sagittarian. So you'd have to say he relates quite well to Jupiter, and they did end up winning that game. Next one is a rugby league game, and this was the biggest upset of the season so far. See a couple of things going on here. You've got Jupiter on the descendant. Venus is going to exactly sextile Uranus during the game, which leads to excitement. You can also see that the Sun is applying to a square to Pluto, not exact. However, the Sun is sextile at MC, which functions as a trigger, and Pluto quite often turns up in big upsets. So might be something brewing in this game. The first game for the West Tigers here. Now this club is a merger between Wests and Balmain, so I actually timed this one exactly when they kicked off as the new entity. And as you can see, the Sun is exactly conjunct Uranus here. So this is quite an erratic team. They have massive highs and low lows. At this point in their history, they were having a bit of a low. So this Venus sextile Uranus is exact, relates well to them because Uranus is very strong for them. They are an Aquarian team. The Sun is in Aquarius and Uranus is in Aquarius, and they're exactly conjunct. So that's one thing you could say relates to them. You can also see that Jupiter there is applying to their Mars, which is another good aspect, so they could be in for a good performance today. And I've put the coach up, Michael Maguire, around the outer ring, and straight away you can see his Sun is also in Aquarius, nearly the same degree, so he's going to relate well to Venus sextile Uranus here. He's also got his Saturn South node on the MC at the start. That's not great. However, it is trine his natal Uranus, and the Sun and Pluto are affecting that. Part of fortune is sextile his Sun. Lots of things going on here. Now, this game did go down to the wire. It went into extra time, and Wests won 21-20 in extra time, and this was the biggest upset of the season by a long way. Parramatta were favoured by more than 20 points, which is a lot. So we're moving on to cricket, and cricket is a bit different in that the captain on the field is higher in importance than the coach. In my opinion, the captain calls the shots, makes the field changes, and coaching in cricket is relatively new. It's only been around for about 20 or 30 years, so the captain has more prominence for cricket. Now, when you come to do country charts, if you're looking at a West Indies game, there's no such country as the West Indies. I use the chart for their first game. So some examples. This is the final of the Indian Premier League, which is the biggest domestic 2020 competition in the world. Chennai were playing KKR. KKR were slight favourites here, and it's played in Dubai because of COVID. And if we bring up the captain here, MS Dhoni, a legend in the cricketing world, see that the Sun and Jupiter are very closely aligned with his Mars here. The Sun is separating by 1 minute, Jupiter is separating by 5 minutes. Jupiter trine Mars is another fantastic aspect to have for a player especially, and Chennai ended up winning the IPL for that season. So this next one is a test match, England versus New Zealand, the second game in the series, which was just recently completed. And I brought up the new captain for England, Ben Stokes. First of all, you can see that Mercury is trine Pluto at the start of this game. That could indicate an upset. Mercury does rule the ascendant here. England were a slight favourite, so maybe not. Mercury is conjunct his Mercury, so he's having his Mercury return trine Pluto, and Mercury rules his Gemini Sun, so it's a very fortuitous aspect. He's also got Mars applying to a sextile to his Sun at the start of this game, and Jupiter is very closely or just past a trine to his Mars, another fantastic aspect. Three good aspects. Now, it didn't look real good for England after 2 days. New Zealand batted first and made over 500 runs, but England made 500, and it ended up they needed 300 runs roughly to win in their last innings, and they actually got it quite convincingly in the end. But they were as long as $17 at one stage to win this game, but they ended up winning. That's how the captain's charts, I think, are very important for cricket. American football, there's no international things. I don't look at the NFC, AFC game, just regular season, no pre-seasons. The head coach, I think, is the most important, then the quarterback. They run the offense and the point scoring and the first game. Now, looking at this year's Super Bowl, I'm going to compare the first game charts here. So you can see Venus and Mars are pretty close together. The aspect I went with for this game being the determining factor was Jupiter is applying it to a sextile to Uranus. I'm going to see how that lines up with the first games. So the first game that Cincinnati played in 1968, the National Football League, you can see that Venus and Mars are very well positioned. They're trine the Sun and Jupiter of the Cincinnati first game, which is very helpful. Jupiter and Uranus are applying to the MC here, Jupiter sextile Uranus trine, which is also very good. And they did go very, very close to winning this game. It was only 3 points. And if we look at the LA Rams, how does this Jupiter-Uranus line up? Well, once again, it's applying to the MC there. However, the MC natally is trine Uranus. So that was a slight edge there. The captain and coach did look better for the LA Rams. So that's how the first game charts can work. The last one, NBA basketball. I'm just calling that a work in progress. Still working on how to figure those games out. I find it very, very difficult. Leaning towards the head coach, a leading player, and the first game. But if you can figure that out, you're an absolute genius. So in the next series of videos, we're going to relate how those 4 criteria we look at in the first series of videos, planets on angles, exact aspects, planetary stations, and the Frawley method, how can we apply those to using these team charts and get a higher probability of getting correct predictions. So thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.